building is failing 99% of the time, because it doesn't matter what you think or what you plan or what you can imagine. The moment you bring that to life, it won't be the same as you had imagined it. Something is going to be different, so you can interpret that as failure or success, but it's going to be different, and most of the time that different is for worse, so you have to adapt.
Hello and welcome back to another episode. Today we have Abel joining us again. I think most of you have already met Abel, who is the founder and CEO of Nuvo. And he's a great coach, entrepreneur, and also he has dedicated his time and a lot of his time helping other founders and other startups gain their experience and also coaching them into how to become more productive and achieve the revenue growth they are hoping for. So today, Abel is joining us for not just talking about the entrepreneurship or the startup, but also talk about how it feels like to be an immigrant founder, what kind of things you have to watch out for, what kind of thing you should consider before coming to Canada, how to prepare for it, and what to expect from Canadian startup ecosystem. So, Abel, thank you so much for joining us and welcome back.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me again. This is great.
So let's just get into it. Last time when we met, we only talked about your company. We didn't touch much on how it felt like to come to Canada. Yeah, I know we talked about it in a sense that how things are different in between Argentina and Canadian startup ecosystem. But today, let's focus on how was the journey like from the very beginning, why you considered Canada, and after coming to Canada, you stayed in Canada. Right now, you are back in Argentina, I believe, and coming back to Canada again soon. But you stayed in Canada for a really long time and built a startup here. So, how was the journey like, and what kind of things you encountered?
Yeah, so starting by the beginning, so I was in tech for many years before considering moving abroad. But at some point, I felt that I wanted to have the experience of living abroad and really being closer to where things happen. The Silicon Valley kind of area. But having had my companies already, I had traveled to the States many times, and my wife and I didn't really feel like growing a child in the US for a few different kind of cultural differences. But we did want to live in North America, and we did want to have that experience. We hadn't known a lot about Canada, but we had heard very good things about it. So we wanted to explore it. So we went to Vancouver, which was our choice because the weather. We didn't want to live, in under uh, 30 degrees or, a lot of
Mhm.
snow. But anyway, Vancouver felt like home. So we felt very welcome. The city is beautiful, a lot of outdoor activities, and most of all, people are super nice, and they have been super nice to us. So yeah, that's why we kind of decided to Vancouver. And yeah, building a business in a different country had its own challenges. Yeah, of course.
So, after you came to Canada, what kind of things you prepared, for example, beforehand, before when you decided, okay, yeah, this Canada, I want to go to Canada and I want to bring my startup to Canada. What kind of things you had to prepare beforehand, and after you came to Canada, what kind of things you had to prepare then?
Yeah, that's a good question. Actually, to be honest, I didn't prepare much because I thought, I already have the experience of doing business with the US. I know how, people in North America behaves and talk and whatever. So I was like, Canada is kind of the same. So I went to Canada like unprepared, or thinking that I was prepared, just to find that Canada and the US are two different countries, and they are very two different countries. Like, they are very different. So maybe, if I do it again, if I would, if I had to start again, I would come more prepared. I think the Canadian startup ecosystem is um, kind of, in some other ways, in some ways, very interconnected. It's very, it's based on trust, and it's built kind of, within the family. So Canada is a big family with everything that that implies. It's hard to break into, especially as an immigrant, especially as, I wasn't speaking English. I am not speaking English as a Canadian, so English as a second language was a barrier. Communication in general is a barrier, has been, same as, the cultural differences and all of that. So I think if I had to start again, I would look into how the Canadian markets work, how the Canadian startup ecosystem work, and come more prepared to, try to integrate myself and my business into that.
So when you came in and then you found a lot of differences between your expectation with the US businesses and then also you, as you said, working in Canada is different than US. Like most people would assume that since we are very close to US, we would have a lot of similarities, but it might not
Yeah,
be completely accurate. And I totally understand that. I have heard similar things from many different founders that when they try to raise money in US, it's completely different mindset as when they try to raise money here in Canada. They
yeah,
face challenges on a different scale, I would say, because people say that investors in Canada have a bit more of a conservative mindset when they try to invest, and they want to see revenue and cash flow, basically.
yeah.
Did you find similar kind of thing when you were interacting with businesses and investors and also different founders here?
Yeah, sure. I think, it's understandable. I mean, if you look at the Canadian population, it's around 40 million people. And, just a portion of those are in the startup and business kind of ecosystem. So the business or startup world isn't as big as in the US. The scale is much, smaller. So it is understandable that an investor investing in a Canadian company within a smaller market and, fewer players and maybe more competition or, closer competition, they want to they want less risks, right? So I think it is understandable. That's why, I say that if I had to start over moving my companies to Canada, I would really look into how the markets work there, how business work in Canada. Yeah. So, for example, for Nubel, the startup that I brought to Canada, yeah, I thought, let's raise maybe a pre-seed round. Let's, use that to build some connections, maybe get some advisors, get some
Yeah.
very smart people on the board. But yeah, it didn't happen. They were all, yeah, show me traction. It was like, yeah, we don't have traction. This is just, an early stage idea, and we have this prototype that we built on the side. And, understandably, they asked for traction. They asked for paying customers. They asked for any signals of, engagement with the platform or whatever. We didn't have any, as I know many other startups don't. So yeah, we can, there is a whole discussion about that kind of gap between ideation and raising a significant amount of money for, really pushing something forward. But yeah, I don't want to get too deep into that.
So
Yeah.
since you brought up Nubel, how is Nubel doing? What stage are you guys at now?
Yeah. So what happened with Nubel is that, well, I don't want to be a kind of, a downer here, talking about the immigration changes lastly, but yeah, we were supposed to get our visas in a timeline, and it turned out that our timeline was extended significantly. So we couldn't push as hard as we were expected. expecting in Canada. So we had to kind of, step back a little bit because we were almost reaching the point of, getting very interested players as partners and some as clients. But it was very complicated to work around immigration policies and all of that. So we decided to take a step back. And what we did was use all the feedback that we gathered during that experience in Vancouver. And we actually did use the rest of the year to do a big UI UX change in the platform. So we are actually finishing that up right now. The platform is looking very, very good. I think this is a very promising solution. So I'm just waiting for coming back to Canada and uh, really marketing, a lot.
Have you guys decided on the launch date?
Not yet. I'll be coming back to Vancouver next year after Christmas and New Year's Eve. And yeah, this is priority number one for 2026.
So congratulations, and I hope everything goes well with the launch. And regarding the visa situation, I know it's tough. Things have been a bit strange in the immigration side of things. There has been like a lot of changes that took place. Even I know a couple of people who are waiting for visas. Hopefully, everyone will get their visas soon. But moving on to the financial side of it, I know you talked about the financial difficulties in Canada raising money, especially for your startup, and just understandably
Mhm.
investors want to see the traction and some kind of cash flow. So, in your conversation and interaction with the investors, what kind of things you learn other than the traction and the cash flow situation? What kind of things that someone should prepare beforehand to engage with the investor more efficiently?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it really depends on the investor. But some investors are more interested in seeing a good presentation from the company and the founders, really look into the founders' experiences and where they come from and the whole team, etc. And some other investors are more like, hey, let's meet for a coffee. I'll ask you three questions and I'll know where you are at. Actually, I met with a few investors, and one of them was very, very nice, but he was also very, straight in what he told me. And we actually met for a walk. We were
Mhm.
walking around Vancouver. We grabbed a coffee, and he started asking questions. And he was like, what are you guys building? This and that. All right. Why? Right. And just asking about why we built it, he asked, like, I don't know, maybe 10 follow-up questions to really understand what was the motivation behind the product and the whole business. Because, when you are building a business, you have to have a very good motivation because you are giving the business maybe 3, 4, 5 years of your life, a lot of money, a lot of people are going to put their efforts and time into building that. So you have to have a very good motivation. So this guy asked a lot of questions around motivation, and then he was like, okay, I understand why you want to build this. I understand the problem, whatever. So how many think the same as you? How many customers do you have? How many companies that are facing this problem want your product?
Mhm.
And yeah, so I, in my experience talking with investors, I think there is a little bit of both investors, and there is kind of a third kind of type of investors that ask for both things, like,
Mhm.
hey, give me the known BS stats, like, do you have traction, why are you building this, and then talk me about your team and show me whatever data you have. Of course, I think there are very basic things that all companies must have, no matter the size or the stage, which are, of course, incorporation, which is, I think, something that has to happen once you see any signal of this is something that I'm gonna build. So the company has to be incorporated. You have to have a very good dashboard with kind of updates that is happening at the company, maybe a new hire or the first client or accomplishments. And then the data room, of course. You have to have data ready for any investors, partners, or anyone interested in the company to look and get very fast. So anyway, I think for anyone wanting to get investment, I think that's an art by itself. Getting investment is a full-time job, and the whole strategy for some companies. I hadn't raised any funds for my companies. I found that process to not be exactly what I am looking for. But yeah, I know it's complicated and yeah, tough, and can also be rewarding, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, basically, what I'm hearing is that understanding not just your businesses, but also understand what kind of investor you are interacting with. Like treating investor as a customer uh, kind of might give you a little bit of understanding on how to approach them. Like
Mhm.
as you do a discovery on your customer, find out what kind of pain points they have. So understanding your investor is also a good thing to do, where you can find out what they are looking for, what kind of investment they want to make, or what kind of return they are looking for. Are they into more of a technical side of things, or are they into more of knowing the founder or knowing the business and the why and how of the business? Then you can approach them and make your pitch accordingly. If someone is interested into technicals more than if you
Yeah,
tell them
exactly.
more about yourself, then they won't be that much interested in knowing about business and yourself. They want to know the technicals of the business first.
Exactly, exactly. And that's something, by the way, very interesting about the Canadian culture. You
Mhm.
can ask, right? So in other countries, it is kind of expected that you guess and you have kind of, a superpower to guess what the other person wants to hear, and you adjust your pitch accordingly to whatever you guess, right?
Mhm.
In the Canadian culture, that isn't true. So you can ask. And that's something funny to say, but that's something that I discovered in my experience with Canadians and North American people in general, is that you can ask. So thank you for your interest in my company. What do you want to know? How can I, answer your questions, or do you want to see this or this other stuff, right? So yeah, that we talked about immigration in Canada and how business work in Canada. I think that's something very basic but also very important to understand. And in the Canadian culture, you are not expected to guess what the other person wants. You can ask, right?
It's like much nicer in a sense that you basically can be upfront and very open about it, then they are very open about it too. I
Hmm.
find it that investors generally want to help startup founders here. Like whenever I have interacted with coaches and investors, always found them to be a lot more helpful, even though when they can't invest it
Yeah.
or they don't think that that investment is right for them, point you into the right direction. They will introduce you to someone who might be interested, and they will basically go an extra mile kind of thing, where they are like, okay, yeah, if I can advise this person into this, or if they are might be a good investment for someone else, they will try to make those introduction and those connections with the founders as well, and they keep in loop. Might not be true for everyone and everyone's experience. I'm just generally talking about how I felt and when I was basically interacting in Canadian startup ecosystem. That's what I found.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, Canadians are super polite as well. So they will listen to you and ask questions out of their politeness, whatever. So it doesn't really mean that they are interested. Something, that happens as well with startup founders is that we are in love with our ideas and our business. So whenever someone says, "Oh, that's interesting," we think that person loves my idea, and I'm gonna follow up, you know, by phone tomorrow. And maybe that person doesn't really want. to know anything about your company. So again, asking about should I follow up or are you interested in me sending you any other information? I think that's also very important.
Like being open about it, having an open communication,
Yeah.
making less of assumption. People here are very kind and they generally want to help people,
Hmm.
and sometimes that gets misinterpreted when you're interacting. But of course, like just asking in the end that like, oh, if you would be interested in subscribing to my newsletter or interested, or if we should like schedule a follow up date, that can
Right.
give you an idea on like what they are feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
So I want to know, as an immigrant,
Hmm.
what's your perspective on how Canadian startup ecosystem is for newcomers and immigrants who wants to start their business either or bring their business from somewhere else?
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm going to say something that most people won't agree. I think the Canadian ecosystem, startup ecosystem is great. Coming from what I come from, having places where you can go and meet a person that founded a unicorn and that person is willing to sit down and give you feedback, that is kind of magical. That is huge. You know Tanis, you had Tanis on the podcast. She
Yeah,
founded
Canada's
many
George.
companies. She's a huge founder and she just sits down with you and she talks. She hosts amazing events. Having access to those kind of professionals where you that you know where you can learn so much. I think that is great. You can also go to a meetup on Thursday, get a beer, and maybe meet an investor there, right? You have resources, you have plenty of communities. I don't want to even get started on communities. So many in Vancouver. You have communities for anything. You can even go to walk and meet a community for walking. So I think the ecosystem is great. What happens though is that it is crowded, of course, and immigration, I won't say it's a problem, but it is a challenge. So it's multicultural. We have different experiences and different interpretations about how people talk and communicate with each other. So communication can be a challenge, can be something to overcome as an immigrant, not only because we don't really speak English well, but because we don't know those kind of, unwritten rules of communication and behavior and so on, right? So I think that the Canadian startup ecosystem is absolutely great. I think there are many opportunities, but of course, not for everyone, right? You have to work really hard and you have to have a very good idea and be executing exceptional.
Most definitely, like I agree with you on the ecosystem improvement that is happening. A lot more support here now. Lot more communities that are providing specialized support in different fields. There are AI communities. There are tech related and development communities. There are even artists and other communities as well that can help you not just get your technical levels but also business and coaching levels done as well if you
Yeah.
need help in those things. And you can it's crowded, like it's crowded as it would be anywhere else. I wouldn't say it's like so crowded that someone cannot get anything done or they would
No,
have
no.
trouble. You will have to do your work kind of thing. You have to make your own effort. You have to go into and find right crowd for yourself. You can't be like, this is happening there, I can go there and that. Like, then you are just overextending yourself and spreading yourself too thin around the whole ecosystem. Finding right match for you, and then as you said, Tannis George, she's amazing. She provides so much help to founder, and she's running co-founder her as well to help co-founders achieve the growth and success they are looking for. Support is definitely there.
Mhm.
But what I hear mostly is that the people, startups and startup founders here in Canada, they prefer going to US for raising money and also accelerating their business. They feel like the growth here is a lot more slower if they try to achieve it. So
Right.
what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's a numbers game. So, when I started explaining what I think about the Canadian startup ecosystem, I said most people won't agree with me. And I said that because what I heard in Canada is that most people compare Vancouver to San Francisco just because it's, I guess, closer. It's a few hours drive. And they say, San Francisco, that's kind of, the place to go if you want to raise money. And they said they tried to compare San Francisco to Vancouver, right? But if you look at the numbers, you are kind of comparing a small city with a huge city. So, in terms of population, San Francisco is bigger than Vancouver in terms of population. They have way more people. They also have a bigger business ecosystem, and they also have a longer track record, right? They have Silicon Valley, was it the 60s or 70s? That, they have built, they have been producing businesses and entrepreneurs and unicorns for many years. They are ahead of Vancouver. So yeah, when I don't think it is fair to compare Vancouver to San Francisco. And I think that's why some people say go to San Francisco. And they are right. They are right, right? It isn't that San Francisco is better than Vancouver or Vancouver is, I don't know, like anything. But yes, it's a smaller place. If you look at the numbers again, just a few companies will get the money they are looking for. The total, amount of money available for startup is as well smaller. So that has to be distributed among those few companies that get funding. So those are going to be very few. So if you want to have a bigger chance of getting money, yes, you can go to a bigger place or a place with more investment or whatever. Yeah, I think it's again just a numbers game.
Yeah, that's true. Like, if you consider that part, how big San Francisco is, and how many more startups they have, right? And you said that they've been building that ecosystem for decades. Completely
Mhm.
true. Vancouver started late, so we can't fairly compare two of them as like, okay, yeah, putting that Vancouver as a ecosystem for whole Canada. That's what people kind of end up doing, and San
Yeah.
Francisco ecosystem for the whole U.S. Kind of thing. So comparing that might not be accurate, of course. And if someone goes to San Francisco now, they are not just competing with startups there in US, but also they're competing other startups who came from Canada and other places. So basically,
Yeah.
the competition gets higher as well. If the money pool is higher, the competition is also higher for that money pool. So there is still might not be guaranteed. And if you do some calculation, chances might even get lower.
Yeah, in some cases, yes. But again, you go to San Francisco or, yeah, maybe San Francisco downtown, you have, meetups and events, daily and, several events per day. And as it is likely that you meet someone very interesting in Vancouver, is the same or maybe even more likely that you meet someone very interesting in San Francisco. So I think it's a combination of several factors. You go to San Francisco and just, we immigrants understand what it takes to leave your home, leave your
Mhm.
place, and go somewhere else to build your business, right? Just that move, just that decision changes everything. You're going to put way more energy in whatever you do just because you have left your family, your things, your food, your language, everything just to build a business. So your intention is to build that business. The same with people that go to San Francisco. They may rent, a small room. They are living their home. They are kind of going close, right? But still, they are living whatever they are doing. They are investing in going to San Francisco and build something. And they are not coming back without having built that. So I think, it's again, it's a combination of a bigger place, a more mature place, bigger investors, maybe more mature investors that may take a little bit more risk, a bigger economy, so a different context. And, you know, among other factors, you have this intentionality of the founding team leaving everything to build a business in San Francisco. So they are very motivated and they are spending more money than in Canada. For Vancouver is expensive, but San Francisco is more expensive. So
Yeah,
it's a
definitely.
big combination of many things. Yeah,
Yeah, I think the mindset here, where basically like burning ships and no way turning back kind of situation that push you even further to find success in what you're doing.
yeah,
People have a lot more tough mindset when they are already decided that they want to leave their home. So like they are already in that uncomfortable zone. So
yeah,
they don't really care about what happens next. They are already in that uncomfortable zone. Then all the new situation is basically okay for them. They don't find that much of fear interacting with other founders or investors. They just go out and try to achieve it because they're like, oh, I'm already out of home.
yeah,
Right? It's like
yeah.
already in the discomfort place. So why not try our best and achieve whatever we can?
Exactly, exactly.
So Abel, like let's come back to Canada a bit.
Hmm.
So I know we don't have that much time left today, but what I wanted to ask you is, what's the one failure that you would say shaped you most pursuing your entrepreneurial journey in Canada?
Okay, particularly in Canada, I think when I went to Canada, I started to have more of a social life than before in terms of in the context of business, right? Just because here in Argentina, the markets are just opening now, so we don't really have a huge startup ecosystem or events, things like that. So most of my work happens here. So, inside by myself. And when I moved to Canada, I started to have more of a social life in the context of work and business. So started to meet a lot of people and started what people call building in public, because whatever you do, you are sharing that on a daily basis. You have a friend, you meet people, and hey, what do you do? How are you doing? How is
Oh
business?
yeah.
So you start talking about that. And something maybe, I don't want to say that I failed, but maybe something that I learned is to fail and admitting when I was wrong and when I was not doing great. So I am a very proud person and I don't want to admit when something is wrong or not doing great because I don't want to be seen as weak or failing or whatever. So I was hiding a few issues with the product or I don't know, strategies that weren't really working.
Mhm.
And I just hit that, right? Whenever someone asked, how is that doing or how is Nubel or no, what about that feature that you are thinking for Nubel? I was like, yeah, that is great. We are having a lot of traction and people are super excited about our new feature. And just because I didn't want to admit that actually no one was actually interested in anything we were doing, right? So I think that's something that I learned. Maybe, yeah, it wasn't right at that moment to do it, but I think, if you really want to build in public, you have to be willing to fail in public. And something that I learned, especially during this last year, is that building is failing 99% of the time, because it doesn't matter what you think or what you plan or what you can imagine. The moment you bring that to life, it won't be the same as you had imagined it. Something is going to be different. So you can interpret that as as failure or success, but it's going to be different. And most of the time that different is for worse. So you have to adapt and change And those small incremental, let's say, successes build the bigger, the whole success quote again, right? So yeah, just kind of summarizing, I think, learning to fail in public was something that I had to go through, and yeah, and be okay with that.
That's a very good mindset because I think being honest to yourself is also a very important part of the entrepreneurial journey. If you are failing, if something is not going right, then just being too optimistic might lead to a bit of I wouldn't say delusional, but it might put you on a wrong path
Yeah,
and might take you longer than to achieve the success you are looking for. It's like basically realize how to say that there's this quote that fail fast, something like that. Like if you're going to fail,
yeah,
then fail fast, and
yeah,
basically find out sooner if you're doing something wrong. Find out sooner and then try to do better. Try to improve on it rather than saying that no, no, we are not failing. We are not doing wrong. Something else is wrong. Maybe outside world is wrong. Rather than doing that, being honest is a very important part of the journey.
yeah. Failing is good because failing is trying and failing is executing. And most founders are afraid of executing. Like, for example, if we talk with 10 founders, or I don't know, maybe more, the biggest of their problems
Mhm.
is getting new customers. And when you ask them, hey, what are you doing to get more customers? None of them will say, I'm calling them. I am going to their offices and having one on one conversations. Most of them avoid one on one conversations because they don't want to face the rejection. So failing is actually getting on that meeting, getting on that call, and getting a no for an answer. Asking a very direct question, getting a no for an answer, asking why, and getting feedback, right? So failing is doing, executing. So failing is okay. Failing is fine. Failing is actually what leads to success. So that's something that I learned during this last year. I failed a lot, uh, over my entire career. But I think this year I executed more than ever and failed a lot. And through the experience of, really assimilating that failure and those experiences, I think that I learned and concluded that failing is what I have to be willing to do every day.
And then, yeah, like if you're failing and learning, then you're actually progressing. You can go further from
Yeah.
that experience rather than giving up or keep on lying to yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And even success can be interpreted that as failure because, I can do great and
Mhm.
land 100 users, and I say, okay, I succeeded. I landed 100 users, and I meet another entrepreneur, and he says, well, that sucks. 100, you should land 100,000 users. That's a failure, right? So results are results. Then it is our interpretation what labels them as failures or successes. And
Glass half
if
full
you
kind of
think about,
situation.
yeah, yeah. So it's, if you interpret something as success, you most likely won't think about how you can do better next time because you are happy. Instead, if you think, okay, I failed, at least partially, I partially failed on something, then you have to give it some thought to improve next time.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway,
I think that was all the time we had for today. Thank you so much, Abel, for coming on the
nice.
show and sharing your thoughts on Canadian ecosystem as an immigrant, and also giving us so much good advice on how to achieve success and how to think of failure as a part of a learning journey.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. This was a very nice conversation.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.